Good morning, everyone. This is FFC News. I'm Emily Tolley, reporting live with the latest left-wing coverage. Today, we'll be hearing from a series of socialist experts on the importance of historic left-wing social movements and their potential impact on American society today. Up first is the dismantling of the Pinochet Constitution. Pinochet's army forcibly removed Chile's democratic system and implemented a dictatorship for 17 years. The most impressive revolt against this was seen in the working class. Chilean civilian protests skyrocketed in the mid-1980s against the economic recession after the first national protest held by the Confederation of Copper Workers was held. Over time, peaceful protests were led by unions, but these protests quickly became bloody once army troops fought back against civilians with force. While tragic and unjust, the strong resistance shown by troops caused various left-wing groups in Chile to band together to form the Democratic Alliance against the Pinochet regime. By the late 1980s, the anger towards the economy expanded to an all-out political distrust. Students and churches joined the socialist movements and chose to focus on the negative impact towards all Chileans. People of all walks of life took part in nonviolent training, public demonstrations, boycotts, strikes, and public singing to demand the change they wanted to see. They finally saw the fruits of their labor in 1988 when an overwhelming majority voted Pinochet out of his presidency. We'll go to Alessia on the success of the Philippine Maoists.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Alessia, and today I'll be covering breaking news about the Filipino Maoists. The Filipino Maoist consists of a new people's army. The new Maoist leadership would drop the reformist ideas that led this to collaborate with the government that was known and ran by Ferdinand Marcos, and enforced several Maoist principles aimed at creating a socialist state through new democracy by launching a new people's war. This was a large social unrest and stemmed from lots of severe violence throughout the nation. This brought forth the first quarrying storm, where several Filipino students in the 1970s rebelled against the Marcos administration. Due to this rebellion, students lost their positions in legislation, leaving them no choice but to push for more social change and government reformation. In the following years, a breakthrough in peace progress between the government and the Philippines took place on October 11th, 1992, and the government declared a policy of amnesty and reconciliation. The Maoist group strongly committed to a full state of communism and sought to ease the misunderstanding between them and the government. They did this through creation of peace talks, which was to bring equal communication throughout the government and also the Maoist party. The peace talks, which sort of was their way to segue the people's concerns and their concerns, showed broad masses of people and made sure that their voices was heard. And next, I'll be handing it over to Claire with the Rojava Kurds.
So when we think of Syria, we think of a war-torn, desolate country because that's the way it's portrayed in American news. However, the news fails to mention the successes of Syria and its people. There is an entire autonomous democratic region called Rojava, made up of 4 million Kurds located in the northeast region of the country. It was founded in 2012 following the Syrian civil war, and it is now made up of former union members, Turkish immigrants, and women and families fleeing Islamic extremism. Rojava has its own economy and government, both of which lack any form of hierarchy or class structure. The people of Rojava are, quote, attempting to create a model of democracy that might actually bring stability to a war-torn region. And the democratic confederalist system they have built has roots in Marxism and is largely inspired by the Kurdish Democratic Union. The people of the Rojava region have gained support from major democratic nations across the world as they fight on the front lines of the war against ISIS, and they are praised for their feminism, inclusivity, environmental sustainability, and other left-wing values, along with their overall philosophy of socialism and equality. And now, on to Sammy with a report on the MAS movement in Bolivia.
Thank you so much, Claire. So let me ask you something. What does Tesla CEO Elon Musk have to do with a right-wing military coup in Bolivia? The answer might surprise you, so let's dive headfirst into this story to see what's really going on. Recently, far-right politicians united with the military and police to overthrow democratically elected socialist president Evo Morales. When Morales, an indigenous person and union leader, was elected in 2005, Bolivia faced many problems. Poverty rates in rural areas climbed to 80%, while questions about the privatization of natural resources swirled around the political discourse. Morales and his Movimiento al Socialismo, or MOS party, rode waves of support from the country's large, alienated, and impoverished indigenous population. Over the next 8 years, Evo Morales and MOS managed to shrink poverty rates from 63.9% to 32.7%. Also, more money was spent on education, health, and pensions, and they finally broke down the barriers stopping indigenous women from joining parliament. The success for the poor and indigenous peoples of Bolivia slowly gave way to a far-right opposition party. When the opposition couldn't gather enough support to beat Evo Morales' MOS party democratically, they organized a coup. The OAS, or Organization of American States, released now debunked claims that there had been irregularities in Evo Morales' presidential democratic victory. So, on November 10th, 2019, the right-wing movement organized a coup with the support of the military, police, and the United States, toppling the democratically elected government. Evo Morales fled to Mexico to escape assassination as the military brutally suppressed protesters, killing 6 and injuring 30. The US-backed illegitimate right-wing government ruled for nearly a year before they were forced to hold an election on October 18th, 2020. The Bolivian people did not give up on their futures and continued to organize for MOS, whose candidate, Luis Arce, eventually won the election in a landslide. Evo Morales and MOS show the true power of Bolivia's indigenous population. They rejected racism and neoliberal capitalism as they fought to reclaim their country from global imperialist forces like the United States. The MOS victory stands as a testament to the power of everyday people organizing for what they believe in. And as for Elon Musk, he was exposed on Twitter for being an imperialist. He came out publicly supporting the coup because it would allow him to continue buying cheap Bolivian lithium for Tesla batteries. Thankfully, on November 9th, Evo Morales returned to Bolivia after a year in exile, all because of the strength and courage of the indigenous Bolivian people. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Brazil's struggle against a military dictatorship stems back from its political roots. It wasn't until the 1980s when Brazil fully established as a democratic institution. During this time, a man by the name of Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, better known as Lula, began working to establish a left-wing political party. The party was named the Workers' Party, or PT for Partido de Trabajadores, and aimed at creating social programs to combat the poverty and violence Brazil had faced under the military government. The party helped establish programs to help close the wage gap between the rich and lower-income communities, such as paying for lower-income families to be able to send their children to school. The Workers' Party remained in power from 2002 up until 2018, with Lula's popularity holding strong until 2014, when an operation called Operation Car Wash uncovered one of the biggest scandals of corruption present. With over $2 billion of money being illegally taken by over 200 governmental employees, including Lula, this Watergate-type scandal created mass distrust in the government and the Workers' Party, and in 2018, Bolsonaro, an extreme right-wing candidate, was voted into power. His political campaign scarily mirrors that of Trump's campaign, and Bolsonaro himself has been seen and referred to as Brazil's Trump. His affinity for a military dictatorship government, hatred towards women and the LGBTQ+ community, and overall bigotry has led to many social movements against him. Though Brazil is far from making headway with women's rights and LGBTQ+ rights, there's a lot to learn from the solidarity that these communities show to stand up against this violence, as well as acknowledging that the Workers' Party was far from perfect, but social programs can help to close the wage gap and work to combat issues caused by a capitalist society. And now, Olivia will be talking about Black socialism in America.
Thank you, Ria. Black Socialists in America, or BSA, was founded in late 2017 as a social media platform to amplify Black leftist voices in our country. BSA was created in response to the lack of Black representation in socialist movements in the U.S. The group is different from other socialist groups because they emphasize the intersectionality of all lines of oppression, such as disability, gender, nationality, and sexuality. As Malcolm X said, you can't have capitalism without racism. Many white-led socialist movements have been known to be class reductionist, where class-based oppression is the largest concern. BSA rejects this idea since we must work through the social construct of race and its effects on our society before we can dismantle capitalism. The goal of this organization is to educate and organize lower-class Black Americans to spark revolutionary change. One of their projects is their Dual Power Project Map. On this map, you can find worker co-ops, community land trusts, small business development centers, and dual power projects. Dual power is defined as two powers, one proletarian and one capitalist, coexisting and competing for legitimacy during the transition away from capitalism. Through alternative institutions like this, society is evolving into a new order, closer to a socialist future. I'm Olivia Anderson, and for all of us at FFC News, thank you for watching. Keep an eye out for our infographics coming out soon. Good night.